Hey you guys, it's Andrea. So I spent the better part of this morning setting up this sort of, there's a camera over there, and I'm actually recording this on my Air, my Mac Air, and it's gotten to the heat of the day, so I'm going to just record this for you guys and then know how I want my setup to be going forward. So, I promised to catch up on all of this deep personal development stuff. I hate to say deep because it's just timely. Um, Things that a lot of this was triggered by the events, maybe even part of being kind of idle since before the holidays. Maybe even that's part of the combination of how this has come together. But anyway, there's some definite measurable points that are related to the events that I went to. So in starting in at the beginning of June, was it June? No, it's beginning of May. Beginning of May, I believe it was. Yeah, beginning of May. Went to 4 events in the space of about 5 weeks, and the last three. The first one was a Limitless event with Mark and the guys from Limitless. That tends to be more of a um, just me having some downtime kind of an event, and pushing my physical limits, obviously, because they are all 21 or so and very active. But it was awesome, even though it was rainy. In fact, I think it rained at every single event that I went to, and they still worked out just fine. So don't even worry about the weather when you start doing this stuff. But anyway, my takeaways were more from it was 2 David Nagel events that sandwiched the Titanium event. So it was a 1 day event in Nashville, and then about 10 days later, I went to, yeah, it was about 10 days later, I went to the Dominican Republic and for Titanium. It's Matt's events, one of Matt's events, Matt Lloyd. And then, I got home on Monday and Thursday or Wednesday, I think it was, John and I drove up to North Carolina. And it was about an 8 hour drive, I think, 8 or 9 hour drive for a 2 day event with David Nagel again. So that was an upsell to his 1 day event. And if you've watched the video that I made after the first David Nagel um, encounter, you'll know that I had a pretty big takeaway as far as phone time. It was just a really quick recap. It was about long distance phone calling had been kind of implanted in my brain that it was a not good thing. So phone calling at all became a not good thing. And when you're doing sales or when you're coaching people or anything like that, it's an important component to making a lot of headway. So the gist of it was that my grandfathers, rule, because phone calling in general used to be super expensive, was that you just didn't do it. So that got passed on down through my second generation. Sorry, my hair is just a train wreck because it's hot and I'm sweaty, and I don't care. You don't care either, right? So that was that takeaway, and that was every bit worth the trip to Nashville, because I suddenly was like released from that particular story. They call them money stories, um, that had been getting in my way as far as being able to scale up. Now, uh, then I went to the Dominican Republic, and it turns out that I've since figured out that I met 3 really important people who, basically, it's the universe keeps smacking me upside the head and saying, pay attention to this particular segment of the world, market segment, really. And the big takeaway is, serve the spiritual people. Now, am I spiritual? Do I claim spirituality? I don't know that I do. And that's kind of, when people start um, labeling people and putting them into, um, tidy packages or whatever, it kind of, that's been another challenge that I've had around marketing, because in order to market correctly, you need to know who you're talking to. Now, I don't I don't I don't do religion for sure, and I don't necessarily want to be. I'm not a. I don't know how to say this without sounding dorky. I'm probably spiritual, but I don't claim it because it doesn't matter that I claim it. Same as if I was particularly a religious in one particular religion or another. Wouldn't feel the need to claim it. It's really about the underlying values, and I know that people who do claim spirituality is their thing are people who I tend to enjoy, people who are doing really interesting things generally, or at least looking for interesting things to do, and often have marketing challenges. Whether that's about money stories or not, we're going to continue to explore. But that's kind of the takeaway from these three gals that I met. So, one, I don't even need to like explain what parts they had in this whole process, except that one of them in particular did have an instrumental part because she actually lives local to me, and sort of local, about an hour away. We haven't seen each other since Dominican Republic, which has been a month ago or better, and we only met once we were in Dominican Republic. So I often have this happen where I have to go away from my local area in order to meet people, even if they are local. It just is the way it is. Although what she wanted when she messaged me was to see about doing some events together. Now we haven't explored that any further. We need to. You know who you are. But what she did come up with, because I had already been contemplating doing like sort of like immersion type workshop masterminds here, just inviting people to me and get the work done. Because a lot of times, even for me, unless I'm sitting in front of somebody who's expecting that piece of the puzzle manifested, like in a couple hours, like go to lunch and make a video and come back, or figure out your mission statement or whatever the task is, write some emails, and we're all going to regroup and meet back and have them done. Unless that stuff, that just always seems to make it easier to get the work done. It doesn't make the work any easier because we could do it just as well sitting at home, but we don't. So that was my vision for events. I think she had more of an idea of doing sort of like more the 2-hour informational events, and we may find a common ground with that or we may not. But the point is that she was triggered to then go looking for locations to do stuff locally. So she went on Airbnb and had only been introduced to it like the day before. She found a listing and sent it to me and said, here, this is in Gainesville. And I gotta tell you that when you ask the universe for something, you better be really clear, because the universe likes to play tricks on you. I was beginning to say, okay, yes to these events, these 2-3 day sit down and roll your sleeves up and get stuff done events with just a couple of, like a handful of people, because they'll be work intensive. And this gal sends me a link, and I look at the place, and I don't know anything about it. And then I look to see where they're located. They're less than a mile away from me, and it's like 100 acres of. They're doing a land trust and retreat center combination. I was floored. Now, also again, the spiritual stuff. So it leans Buddhist, but it's more about spiritual gatherings that they're willing to host. And at first, it sounded like she wasn't going to be the gal who runs the property. That she and her husband weren't going. They were a little bit like, does this match our vision? But the truth is that personal development and learning to be more in tune with your own thoughts and all that stuff is critical to entrepreneurship. So, and especially if I'm not targeting, I hate that word, especially if I'm looking to serve It's people who are leaning spiritual anyway, people who will have that common conversation to have with them and with me and whoever. So it then proceeded to expand into, they were just starting a 10-day retreat when we got in contact. She found me on Facebook after I messaged her on Airbnb pretty quick. And then they were just starting a 10-day retreat, a 10-day silent retreat of all things, with a Buddhist monk from Sri Lanka. Turns out he's a pretty big deal. And they finished up their retreat. So we had made contact. We were gonna, connect. I was gonna go see what was going on over there and start to think about how it might work for us for our workshops. And it turned out that the next 5 days, the Monday, when I'm recording this, it's just last week. So the next 5 days were going to be a mindfulness camp for kids. Now, in between, at the end of that retreat, and then right the Sunday afternoon, she put a shout out on Facebook to have people come help sort of prep for the camp. And I thought, okay, we're like 5 minutes literally away, and so maybe this is a good time to meet, give a little value in advance kind of thing, and just check things out, and begin to know each other and stuff like that. So we did that. I took 2 kids with me, and John did pop over just to sort of see where the place was, and neither kid really wanted to go at all. I couldn't explain to them what it was because I didn't know where we were going exactly, just that we were going to go help somebody, prepare their garden, like do some weeding and stuff, and they went, they were not into it. But it turns out there's a pool. They enjoyed that. Well, Morgan did. Zane didn't get in. And they were starting this camp, and I hadn't said anything to the kids about the camp, and Morgan ended up spending the whole week there. Got to have these tiny audiences with the monk, and at the end of they have 2 kids who are just a hair younger than each, a boy and a girl, of my 2 younger kids. The 2 little boys love to play Minecraft together. I mean, it's just been a really, really, it's just like a serendipity thing, and I'm just like letting it all roll, because all of it just is falling together kind of easily. So then it proceeded to be, then I had the epiphany pretty much after the camp had ended. I had this epiphany as I was talking to one of the 3 women that I connected with in the Dominican Republic about the spiritualities, serve the spiritual people, whatever that turns out to be. So it wasn't quite at the end of the camp, because then I had this, I don't know what the timeline was, but at the very end of camp, they did an hour of parent and monk conversation around what turns out to be a passion project for him, which is about mindful families. The idea being that he can access, he can influence children, and they're easier to influence and become. The more people that we have in charge of their own thoughts, the better off the world will be in general. So it's not about Buddhism, it's about being aware and responsible for your own everything, right? So his vision is that children are naturally that way, at least at some point they are, and that they have a lot less baggage basically than adults do to unpack and spend decades figuring out that they really want to be in charge of their own thoughts. So his vision is that mindful families will have, by teaching parents to teach their children, there will ultimately be an exponential spreading of this idea that people can, I don't even know the right words to use, because I'm not even going to pretend to be that guy, but what I immediately recognized was that there were only 5 of us in the room. And part of his conversation was about how the United States has been tough to fill rooms for him. And he was, not complaining, just kind of like, acknowledging that and recognizing that and thinking, it's good to have whoever shows up, but more would be nice. And all I could think was, this is just a marketing problem. And who's sitting in the room with him is somebody who actually enjoys that part of life. It's marketing and getting eyeballs and bringing people together, making connections. And so as I'm sitting there, Mindful Families was already the core. That's why they even ran the camp, so that he could have some contact with children. He's a bachelor. He's not got a family. He doesn't have children in his life very often. So this retreat center having a camp worked out to be a really good match for that. And then, so the Mindful Families part was already kind of predetermined. But as I was sitting there thinking about marketing when I should have been listening to the monk, I was thinking somehow what I do is domain names pop into my head, or what can be domain names pop into my head, and I assume they're a domain name and I go buy it. So I purchased leaningintomindfulness.com, which releases me from needing to be the expert. It's just about the journey. And it also allows people to bridge that gap between what they think might or might not be on the other side, and just kind of being in a place where they can explore the idea, but not necessarily be, pinned down. And I think that people shy away from things that are unfamiliar because there's not an opportunity to just kind of play with it and not necessarily have to be labeled something. Anyway, that's what's been going on. And so we have a place for workshops. Anybody's ready? I think in October. It's going to be October, maybe November, but probably October. It's going to be beautiful here in Florida at that time. I have this new, it's not like I'm changing anything. It's just a different doorway for the people who are in that conversation. So leaningintomindfulness.com and then mindfulfamilies.co. That helps. That's just my contribution to the cause of Mindful Families. And, my kids happen to really enjoy the retreat center and blah, blah, blah. So it's just this interesting local connection where I can provide value. I've got the sites up. Probably if you're watching this right after I make this, there's probably nothing in it. I do have the skeleton idea down. We're supposed to meet with them this afternoon to sort of explore further. Turns out with the land trust part, the husband in particular has a skill set around nonprofits. So they're thinking they're going to do some kind of mindful family nonprofit, and I am just willing to be whatever part of that. It just doesn't even matter to me how it all unfolds. It's just cool to watch it unfold. So if you'll go to either of those sites, you'll see the beginning. I picked a really cool responsive theme. It's so bare and so just plain and simple. I'm excited about that. I made a quick logo thingy for the header on Canva. It took me about 5 minutes. I had to do a lot more thinking around the navigation of stuff. So some of the links on the top, one on leaningintomindfulness.com has a link that goes to Mindful Families, so that people who have that interest can go there. The rest is about marketing. And I'm excited because the world needs a whole lot of mindful marketers in the world, because we can make such a difference if we can get our messages out or help other people get theirs. Okay, 20 minutes later. I never talk this long, you know that, and I just wanted to give you this big picture, what the heck has been going on. Oh, there were two other major takeaways from uh, David Nagel that are equally important to this, and and one is a little bit bizarre because it's really specific to my situation. But anyway, he deals with money stories, right? So I had a money story around, well, it wasn't a money story exactly, but he said something that just clicked with me, and it made me start thinking about the price points that I've been selling. So here's the perfect example. So he said, all you have is a math problem. So I tell people they just got a transaction problem, which is true, because if you're not asking for the sale, it doesn't matter what it costs, the thing that you're selling or what you might profit from it. If you're not asking for the sale, then you're not going to have any transactions. Doesn't matter what the number. But I was making transactions. I've been making them for years. And he said to all of us, there was a group of 18 people, I think, at this, it was called Shatter, and it's about glass ceiling was kind of the theme. He said, you have a math problem. And I thought, do I? And yeah, it turns out I do, because if my target number, my next target number is $1 million in sales, then, and actually I think I'd rather it be $1 million in sales, like in profit, not just in sales, because those numbers can get a little gray and sketchy too. People will say I made, $500,000, but they actually spent 400,000 on advertising. Well, that's a lot of it's not deceitful exactly, but it is misleading, and you have to really ask, what are people talking about when they talk about I made sales, and what's the profit part? That's the only part that really matters. So I'm going to say $1 million in profit. $1 million in sales will come first, and that's fine. But anyway, if that's what I want, which I do, I have to have products in place and kind of a game plan for filling that number. It's just a math problem. It really is. So I have a product, for instance, called Funnel Clinic, which if you're watching this, you may or may not, you're probably in it, but if you're not in it already, you might be in it at some point. It's only, at this point, it's only, well, I don't even want to say the number because it may change. The point was that if I wanted to get $1 million, you could do the math yourself if you want to do it that way. And the way that I was selling it up till now, and still am at this point, I was going to need 1,800 sales every month. So it is I was going to need 1,800 sales annually if I was doing the annual pricing. 1,800 people that I would have to then be available to the way that I had positioned this offer. 1,800 is an impossibility without a big team of people. And I thought, I don't even with a big team of people, why do I want that responsibility? I just didn't. I was just like 1,800 people. That's insane. Well, I then thought about, I had just sold a $26,000 mastermind offer to a couple people had said yes to that, and I thought, well, if I did more of that, how many would I need? Turns out I only need 40 sales. That's a big difference, and that is a definite math problem. So, who knows how this will all pencil out in the end, but just having that epiphany was worth going to North Carolina. And then there was this other strange thing, and I may leave it for another time because it's connected to growing up in New York City in the 70s, being biracial, and being an introvert, and how the combination of those things has honed Andrea as she is, but we'll tell that story another time. It was really kind of like, where the heck did that come from moment. And I even kind of butted heads a little bit with David about it, because he had one takeaway from it and I had a completely different one. Of course, mine is right. But anyway, it was all good because it gave us, and actually going home, John and I stopped. There was rush hour. We were going home on a Friday. It was rush hour. We started home, and he and I had an incredibly great conversation around what had transpired that day. So if that was the takeaway from it, maybe, I don't know. It's all just good stuff. So there's your update. And I don't know what else to say except that I'm really excited about what's coming next, and get ready for October, and get ready to promote Funnel Clinic, because it's time we can knock. I think I'm going to just knock out the different funnels that we're planning. We have 3, maybe 4 in a week. Just record them and knock them out and do some Q&A in a upsell a workshop thing. Good stuff. Okay, everything's going to be perfectly fine. I know it is. And we're all gonna, everybody who is ready to take action, just, give me an extra shout out, give me a private message, something, so that I know to pay attention to you, because things are gonna be great going forward. They already are, but they're gonna get even better. Alrighty, I'll talk to you soon.